As an American citizen and a US World War I Centennial Commissioner traveling the United States, I have found my fellow Americans do not know very much about World War I and the involvement of Americas and its sacrifice. This memory is not forgotten in Europe, where reasons to remember World War I are plenty. It is not so far from us. My mother and my mother-in-law died last month. They were born respectively in 1914 and 1918. I had a grandfather who fought in World War I. Another one, handicapped, was a school teacher of the kind who raised their students to write Vive l'Amérique, like this wonderful exhibition that you have downstairs here in the museum. I had a great uncle who was killed, two who were gassed. On my husband's side, his grandmother was the granddaughter of Emperor Franz Joseph. She was a cousin of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, whose assassination sparked World War I. My reason for being with you today is to tell you how grateful I am, as a French-born woman, for what Americans did twice in a century to save France. While during World War II, Americans entered the war because they were attacked on their own soil, at the time of World War I, the United States entered the war for purely unselfish and idealistic reasons, for peace and democracy. These were noble reasons. And even if the peace was short and democracy failed in most of Europe, American soldiers gave their life fighting for values we still respect as highly today. We should never forget them, nor forget that nearly 20% of Americans who fought in World War I were foreign-born, and they died for the ideals they had come to find in this country. Beyond their military service and their personal sacrifice, the American people demonstrated their generosity, not only in wartime by joining the fight as volunteers, as soldiers, aviators, doctors or nurses, but also in peace, in helping rebuild the devastated regions of France and Belgium. Names like Carnegie, Mellon, Rockefeller, and many more are forever inscribed on the churches, the cathedrals, the libraries and hospitals of Eastern France, where young people today are still raised with the memory of American generosity. President Wilson's war plan was a peace plan. Even if it didn't have the expected result, it still laid the foundation for the transatlantic alliance, and it taught lessons to Americans and Europeans that allowed for a peace after World War II that has lasted until today. Let's all work to keep this peace, but also learn from the lessons of 100 years ago. Learn about the causes of the war, its consequences, and remember that much of today's conflicts are rooted in World War I. Our April 6th ceremony will introduce to the American public the important debate that occupied our country for 3 years about the US decision to enter World War I. We will hear the voice of those who opposed war and those who felt the United States could not remain a silent bystander in such a horrible tragedy when millions were killed. I could speak to you about the causes of World War I. I wish I would have the time to discuss its consequences, cultural, technological, medical, political, and economic. Borders were redrawn after World War I. And 100 years later are still the sources of most of the conflict. As a commissioner on the World War I Centennial Commission, I hope the April 6th commemoration of the entry of the United States in World War I will open a national awakening about what World War I was, what it meant for our country, and what we today should learn about it, not to repeat the mistake of the past. Thank you.